Let's talk about NWA Powerrr. I caught the show, and Sean and I were talking about it off the air. It was a real throwback. Like it was a real throwback to 30 years ago. Everything was almost identical to the old NWA show 30 years ago. They were in a very similar looking. Was it the exact same studio?
No, it was like a block or two away.
They had it set up the same way. The ring looked identical to the ring from 30 years ago. Same color and everything. They had the same setup with the two broadcasters at the broadcast table. Then they had the table set up for the interviews. Excuse me. And they did a lot of the same kind of thing where the guy would come out from the curtain. He would go to the table, cut the interview, and then immediately go to the ring. And then during the course of the show, most of the matches were enhancement matches, which I'm cool with because that's how you build your talent. But then they would finish with a competitive match at the end.
They weren't just enhancement matches. They were enhancement matches where the guys did cool stuff. Like, I mean, I'll be honest with you. A lot of the guys on that roster wrestle the same way, but you would never be able to tell it based on their enhancement matches. You go in there and you watch the wild card team whose story is they were put together as a wild card team in the tag tournament and ended up being really successful. They whipped those poor jobbers' asses so bad. And then you had a guy come out there calling for Tim Storm. It was Josephus just screaming, "Storm, come out here." And then James Storm came out there just to shut him up.
Right.
That was really cool. The promos on that, Jimmy, ruled.
Yeah.
They were all just so simple. This show was exactly as advertised. And that style of wrestling was never my thing. I was a WWF kid.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really give a shit about that. Like, I didn't care much for that. And then Tim Storm, 54 years old, looked better in the ring than he did as NWA champion. He rose to the occasion. Him and Nick Aldis had a really good match. I loved this show. I loved it. Jim Cornette was good on commentary. Hey, I'm not going to agree with his opinions on almost anything based on the way he takes things, but his commentary was good. I thought the other fella, can't remember his name, was good. Dave Marquez was good on interviews. Only thing I thought was lacking was the championship introductions. I think they could have been a little more pomp and circumstance, but
I thought it was pretty good too.
I enjoyed this show.
Yeah, it was definitely a throwback to 30 years ago. I mean, watching the promos from that table setup, it's almost like I was seeing Ric Flair and the Horsemen because it was this exact same setup. The only thing I didn't like, and I told Sean about this off the air, was the backdrop that they had for the interview stage there where the table was. It looked pretty cheap. It looked like it was thrown together last minute. So I wasn't a fan of the backdrop. I think they could work on that. But otherwise, yeah, it was definitely a throwback. I saw that the viewership numbers on YouTube were pretty good. I question how they're making money with this because YouTube doesn't monetize wrestling the best.
It's an ad. It's an ad
to try to get other things.
To try to get onto a network. I reported about it last week. It is about 260,000 views between YouTube and Facebook right now.
Good for them. Good for them. The last I looked, didn't Dark have just a bit over 400,000? Last I looked.
I'd have to look. I can look right now
on YouTube. So
435,000 on YouTube. That's a damn good number.
That's a good number, but good for NWA that they're not embarrassingly lower than AEW Dark.
Well, here's the thing. Also, like, I don't know if you saw, I think Lagana came out and said like 22% of their viewers came from AEW Dark.
Okay.
Like they were able to see what the lead-in was, and they're getting the YouTube bump now, as Lagana calls it. But, man, you got a show on AEW doing 400. It's going to end up well over 500,000. You got a show doing 500,000. Think about what that's going to do for your subscription numbers.